You can start when you're ready.
Good morning, everybody. Whoa, that was a little loud. I'll step back a bit. Okay. I'm used to it not conveying things well enough, but that's not a problem today. Welcome. I'm Suzanne Molnar. I'm a member of the worship committee. I'm doing this as a worship associate, also a member of the welcoming congregation committee, and this is a service done by by Reverend Carol and the welcoming committee. We are a church, a congregation that welcomes everybody, whatever your gender orientation, your sexual orientation, yourself, who you are, age, national origin, religious convictions. Welcome, welcome. Last night I attended a wonderful presentation at the Clarence Brown Theater of Kinky Boots, and I don't know if they used the lead character, certainly came across as the lead character, said, "Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken." Yeah, that says it. Okay. We have announcements in the order of service, or if you're remotely attending, scrolling across your screen. Reverend Carol, is there any announcement that you particularly want to highlight?
I am going to announce one. I can do that now if you would like.
Okay.
So, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Lovely to see you all here this morning, and special welcome to those of you who are with us virtually. I'm Reverend Carol Bodeau. I'm privileged to serve here as minister, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. So, this is a heads up that in 2 weeks, it's our congregational meeting. Okay, you're all like, great, congregational meeting, that sounds exciting. This year, it is exciting. The congregational meeting in May is when we finalize our budget for the upcoming year, and it is when our pledge or canvas campaign concludes. And the good news this year is it's going to be one of the best good news years for our pledge campaign that we have had since I've been here. So it's very exciting. The stewardship team met this week to talk about it, and the board will be meeting this afternoon to talk about it. So please plan to attend our meeting on May 19th after the service. It's going to be an exciting time for us to talk about all the wonderful things that are ahead of us as a congregation. Also, don't forget that today is potluck day. If you walk past the kitchen door, you smell things that smell spicy and good. So we will have our potluck. Boy, there's a lot going on today, actually, because we have potluck, and then sort of towards the mid-range of potluck, for those of you who want to do spiritual discussions, we're actually going to have a spiritual discussion table today. And we'll see when we all kind of gather together if we feel like we want to do it in this room or find another space that's a little quieter for our spiritual discussions. So there's a lot going on today. I don't think there are any other major announcements. Anybody else? Anything else we need to highlight today? Anything else from you, Suzanne?
Well, it sounds like from what you were saying, Carol, that in 2 weeks it should not just be a meeting, yeah, I ought to go, but a celebration. Yep. There's going to be not just, okay, we'll check this off, but because of what the congregation has done in terms of the pledge campaign, a celebration.
Don't miss it.
today, también es Cinco de Mayo. One more celebration, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
All right.
We don't formally celebrate that here, but, it's good.
Pick your holiday, any holiday, we're glad to have it. So we're going to begin with inviting our bowl to sound. For those of you who haven't been here before, we invite the bowl to sound. So I'd like to invite you all just to take a deep breath. One of the things we often do when we come together is we often bring with us assumptions, expectations of what should be and what shouldn't be. Today, we're going to talk about our expectations, our fears, our phobias, and how we can open our hearts and let those relax and release. So as the bowl sounds, I want to invite you to just let whatever is here with you be here. Whether that is noise or quiet, whether that is surprise or expected, whether that is something that you came carrying in from the past, or something you're expecting from the future, just allow the bowl to assist you in being present with whatever is with you, with us, right here, right now.
I'd like to ask Thomas to come up and light our chalice and our 2 candles. We light our chalice in celebration of us and of Unitarian Universalism across the globe. The other 2 candles, the first is for concerns for people who are suffering, in particularly with war, with fighting. Ukraine, Gaza. And the candle of joy is there are people meeting right now, earnestly trying to come up not only with a way of stopping the immediate fighting in Gaza and getting hostages released, but in coming up with a way that Palestinians and Israelis can live ongoing, if not cheerfully, at least peacefully and stably with each other. And that seems worth celebrating to me. Words for chalice lighting. In a sense, I don't know, you dedicate something like that, but anyone who was here for David's and my wedding saw me being walked down the aisle. Uh-oh, I'm starting to tear up. By a young man, my now son, who spent most of their life as a girl and then a woman. I think that's one of the best looking men I've ever seen, not to slight anybody else. But I really celebrate them, their courage in saying, this is who I am. So my chalice lighting reading is from Walt Whitman. Well, it's a little bit of his. I sing the body electric. I sing the body electric. The armies of those I love engirth me, and I engirth them. They will not let me off till I go with them, respond to them, and discorrupt them, charge them full with the charge of the soul. The love of the body of man or woman balks account. The body itself balks account. That of the male is perfect, and that of the female is perfect.
So in a minute, Sandra's going to play some music for us, just so that we can become a little bit more present. The day we're actually celebrating and marking today is called the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. That is celebrated on May 17th each year in honor of May 17, 1990. And the reason that day is important is as that was the day that the World Health Organization removed homosexuality from the classification of diseases. Up until that point, it was considered a disease. It is no longer. And that holiday has been celebrated since 2005. Millions of people around the world celebrate it. It's a day to really celebrate the progress of LGBTQ plus people. And today, we are going to talk about that particular thing, but we're also going to reflect on just how fear slows us down in a whole different range of ways. Fear of things that are unfamiliar to us, fear of things that we have experienced in the past and don't want to experience again in the future, fear of the unexpected or the unknown. So today we're talking about phobias, particularly as they affect LGBTQIA plus people, but also how they affect how all of us interact in the world. So as Sandra plays, I'm going to invite you to do something. I'm going to invite you to think of 3 things, okay? The first thing, which is going to be the easiest, is something that bugs you, something that you don't like, all right? The second thing is something that you feel better than or above or have gotten past. And the third thing is something that you're willing to admit you're afraid of. So I'm going to repeat that. Something that bugs you, something that you think you're better than, and something that you're afraid of. Just allow yourself to contemplate that as Sandra plays for us. All right, so the first one, take a minute. We're going to spend a minute with what bugs you. Just sit with that. What bugs you? Why does it bug you? Usually when something bugs us, it bugs us because we feel some kind of sense of loss or threat or danger from it, even if we can't really acknowledge what that is. See if you can sit with what you're thinking bugs you and see what it is you think that thing is going to cost you. What are you afraid you'll lose if that thing that bugs you is allowed to exist? What's the loss? What's the cost? All right. Something that you think you're better than or beyond. Something that you want to exclude because you've gotten past it. These are not hard to come up with in our current political climate, folks, at all. Or in our families, or in our social contexts. We spend a lot of time excluding things. How many of us, I'm going to include myself here, as much as I try not to do it, have the word should at the top of our vocabulary list? Should is one of our all-time favorite words, and it is also one of the most limiting words in our world. Things should look this way, not the other way. I should have done this, I should have done that. They should do this, they should do that. We're better than this, we're better than that. These are words that help us protect ourselves from things that we think are going to hurt us in some way. But we rarely identify the actual fear behind these shoulds, right? And yet, how much do they control us? How much broader could our world be if we could let go of that? Now, what about the thing you actually are willing to acknowledge you're afraid of? Can that definition expand and grow to include the things that you think shouldn't be in your experience? One of the things that the Unitarian Universalist Association is going to be voting on in a few weeks, very short time, is putting love, literally the word love, at the very center of our denomination. If you all pick up your little order of service here, look on the back of it. It used to be that we had the 7 principles, and we still kind of do, but they look different, and we're going to be having our final vote on this. See the little picture up in the upper left-hand corner? And the chalice has love in the middle of it. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. Often what happens is we're so concerned about our shoulds that we forget about love. So this is really the point of today's service. The theme is International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. And the actual campaign theme for that this year that they came up with is No One Left Behind, Equality, Freedom, and Justice for All. This is a call for unity, for only through solidarity for each other will we create a world without injustice where no one is left behind. But I want to ask you, is anybody besides me intimidated by the idea of trying to create literally an entire society where no one at all is ever left behind? That feels to me like a little bit of a big project, right? So what does that mean in practice for us? Specifically today, we're thinking about the LGBTQIA+ community, but everybody, really. What does it mean to put love at the center? And how do we make sure that the people in our lives are not left behind? We can't control all the things that happen in our world, but we can do our best in our personal lives, in this community, in this space, and in our larger neighborhoods and society to welcome and celebrate and support our LGBTQ family, friends, neighbors, and also to do this in all sorts of other ways in our lives. So Elizabeth and Barry, who are on the Welcoming Congregation team, are going to give us some tips specifically for being good allies to the LGBTQ community, and they are going to tell us those based on some information from the LGBTQIA resource sites, but you can apply them to other things as well. So, Barry, Elizabeth.
An ally is someone who takes action to support and advocate for the equal treatment of the community other than their own, especially when it's challenging or uncomfortable to do so. Here are some things allies can do.
Learn about LGBTQIA plus issues or identities by being an active listener when people in that community speak. Especially listen to those whose identities are unfamiliar to you. Follow or engage in LGBTQIA plus media, including content as content creators, groups, and podcasts, and so forth. Attend workshops or training on inclusion.
Another way is to model inclusive language. This includes using correct pronouns when you use them, when you know them, and avoid making assumptions. If you don't know someone's pronouns, ask politely and use neutral terms like partner or spouse instead of gendered versions.
Respect privacy. Make sure you have permission before you share about someone's identity, and keep your questions of others appropriate.
Be visible. Wear rainbows, display signs or symbols of inclusion, and put your pronouns on your Zoom title and email signature.
Use your voice. For example, speak up when you hear someone misgendered. This is when you hear someone use incorrect pronouns for someone when you know the correct pronouns.
Use your hands. Help organize events and sign petitions.
Use your money. Support groups that advocate for LGBTQIA people and support businesses that are inclusive, especially those owned by LGBTQIA plus people.
Okay, so we will print copies of that list and make them available to you all, right? But they're really about being good listeners and being respectful. It's sort of the, the golden rule, right? Treat other people as you'd like to be treated. Most of the items on the list of ally work can be individually not seem too big, but they can be a little intimidating when taken together as a list. We're going to give them a minute. You guys going to go play on the playground? You going to go play on the playground? Bye. Everybody say bye. Have fun, friends. Have fun, friends. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, everybody take a deep breath. The world is full of all kinds of exciting, cool stuff. Don't you wish you were that excited all the time? Now, I'm going to invite you all to do something. Now that the kids actually get to go play like kids, I want you all to take 1 minute and make a bunch of loud noises. Because you've all been like, we're supposed to be quiet, we're supposed to be quiet, we're supposed to be quiet, we're supposed to be quiet. Let us break that up for a minute. You got 1 minute. I want you all to make loud noises. Good deal. You can do it. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't do that.
15 seconds.
You didn't last very long either. Do you see how restrictive should can be? It can really structure our behavior and our willingness to just see the positive in something, like the enthusiasm of children, playful. All right, back to the hard work of being adults who are supposed to save the whole planet. We're not going to save the whole planet, but we can learn to be nicer to each other. We can learn to be compassionate listeners. We can be active listeners when other people are speaking. We can listen when someone says, I'd like you to use a different pronoun for me. We can avoid making assumptions about other people. We can use our voices and our hands to help others be more kind. Thinking about those sorts of things, your 3 things that I asked you at the beginning. Maybe it's pronouns. We've had some work in this congregation where pronouns were really hard. That was one of the things in this congregation a couple years ago that people really struggled with, using pronouns. There were lots of shoulds and shouldn'ts about it. When you think about those kinds of things, the things that annoy you or that make you feel like you have a better answer, what kinds of emotions come up? What kinds of physical and emotional responses come up? Some of us are maybe a little bit further along the road of working with LGBTQIA issues or economic justice or other justice issues, and we might feel kind of fairly fluid about that. But there may be other issues that trigger feelings of annoyance or shouldness. Those are often feelings that are rooted in, at its most basic, fear. We might call it the fight or flight response, the response that says, something's wrong, I have to change it. Something's wrong, I have to fix it. One of the most important first steps to fixing what's wrong is recognizing the emotional core at the basis of our desire to fix it. This helps us learn to act with love rather than judgment, compassion rather than criticism, patience rather than impatience. These are skills that we can all cultivate to help make our world a more just, loving, and fair place. No matter where we are on our journey with different justice issues, we can all learn to practice a little bit more of those things and learn to do it by recognizing our own phobias. Some of you may be familiar with the story in the life of Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman faced a lot of fear and judgment and criticism. One of the world's greatest of all-time poets, he faced a lot of, you can't do that, you can't say that, poems should be in meter, not free verse. We don't do that, that's not okay, right? You can't say those things about stuff, about people and bodies and that craziness, you can't do that. He did a lot of things that were responded to with a lot of shoulds. But those people who were willing to say, this is really different. This is not what we expected. This is unfamiliar. They were able to meet his words and his innovations with curiosity. Now, probably the hardest thing about being a good ally to anyone who is different than ourselves, in the face of any prejudice or bias or discrimination, is facing our own prejudices, our own biases, our own fears, and our own limitations, because we all have them. We are all conditioned by our social circumstances, every single one of us. We don't have the option of being truly objective. It's just not humanly possible. We are all conditioned, and the conditioning impacts us mostly unconsciously, and it's mostly obvious when we're in situations with people or things that are unfamiliar or different or unexpected. Now, some of the clearest indicators of that kind of conditioning include some of the feelings you might have had when I said think about something that bugs you, or something that you feel better than. Some really common indicators of our conditioning might be a vague feeling of discomfort, judgment, a tendency to be dismissive of a topic or a person or their concern, defensiveness, self-righteousness. These are all fear wearing other faces. Where do you feel those kinds of things most often when you think about issues that we might raise here or in other places that are justice issues or social change issues? The reason we use words like homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia when we specifically describe discrimination against LGBTQIA+ people is that it is phobia, fear, usually unacknowledged, unrecognized, sometimes adamantly refuted. I don't have any issue with that. I'm not afraid. It's just, I just know better. And this can be applied in all kinds of areas, right? Fear is at the root of our biases. Uncertainty about what these things mean for us, for our identity, for our space in the world, for our security, for our safety, for us getting what we want, for us getting our needs met. Those are valid concerns. But how do we find an antidote to fear when we're facing those kinds of things? Of course, looking at our fear and recognizing it as an emotional response is essential. But that's a little tricky, isn't it, if it's masquerading as knowing better or being smarter or having already done that, right? That's the trickiest one. That's the trickiest face of fear. Another tricky face of fear is what we call sometimes dissociation, or just shutting down, avoiding. It's hard in the face of those responses to actually feel the fear behind rationalizations, explanations, dismissals. The reason is this. Looking at actual fear makes us feel vulnerable. All those other responses make us feel bigger, stronger, braver, and better. It's hard to choose to feel vulnerable. It is a biological and natural response to go to something that makes us feel bigger, stronger, better, and safer. But if we're working hard to feel bigger, stronger, better, and safer, there's a really good chance that what we're really feeling is afraid, uncertain, confused, ambivalent, not knowing how we fit, not knowing what's right for us. And when we do that, the single most important thing we lose out on is the capacity to be compassionate and love and connect. It's really hard to be loving and connecting when we're defending and separating. But of course, if you're in danger, you need to defend and separate yourself from the danger. That makes perfect sense. We generally want to avoid feeling vulnerable. So our minds will generally try just about anything to deny the fear and the vulnerability and replace it with something else that makes us feel more courageous or out of danger. What's the alternative to that? The alternative to that is to take a couple of deep breaths and get curious. Maybe I'm a little afraid of that. What do I really feel? What's really going on here? What are they really saying? What do they really care about? What's really important to them? Hard to do that when our fight, flight, fear, freeze response, fight, flight, fawn, freeze, right? All of those, when that response is in action. So we actually do have to actually breathe and take a few minutes to just let our nervous system slow down, right? Often our fear is actually a fear that change will somehow undermine our stability or our security in a way that is either material or about our identity. Change might damage a sense of ourself, like, who am I? I can say that this has been really true at Westside. We've talked a lot over the last few years about pronouns is a great example. Pronouns is a great example and very relevant to today's topic. For many people, to undermine or change the way we use pronouns feels really destabilizing to our sense of ourself. Those gender markers have been, for many of us older people, an absolutely crucial sense of how I actually am in the world. They tell me all sorts of things about how I'm supposed to act and how I'm supposed to look and how I'm supposed to talk. And if they start to get wobbly and weird and go away, it's really confusing and kind of scary. But how can we be loving and compassionate to someone else who says, yeah, but the old version is really hard on me. Like, it's really hard on me. How do we listen to them and still hold our own security and our own sense of belonging? Change might erode a solid footing with social cues or our relationships. It might destabilize relationships with people in our families or our communities. One of the words that I think is really important when we think about these destabilizing concepts is the word understanding. Seems like a pretty simple word, right? We use it all the time. Someone says something and we think we understand them. Actually, the trick is that frequently we don't actually have a clue what somebody else is saying. We're translating. Someone says something, and we receive it, and we translate it in our own mind based on our language, based on our experience, back at that conditioning, right? Anybody ever had the experience of thinking you said something and thinking the other person heard you, only to find out that they had a completely different interpretation of what you just said? That they thought something completely different just happened than what you thought just happened? Okay, understanding is an interesting word. I thought I would look it up because I'm a language geek, and I looked it up. And the etymology of that word is pretty interesting. It comes from a root word where under doesn't mean below or beneath. It actually comes from the word antar, which actually means with or among. So if you actually translate what that word originally meant, it was standing with or among others. To stand in another's context, to step into their framework, to step into their experience, rather than making their experience agree with what I already know. That requires expanding our context, expanding our range of understanding. If I want to understand you, I can't expect you to speak the language I already speak, or have had all the experiences I've already had, or assume that your conditioning is the same as mine. If I want to truly understand you, I have to listen to you carefully and be willing to move with you into your experience, into your context. And that feels vulnerable. That feels scary, right? Now, that's challenging, but not impossible. And it is, in fact, what we say as Unitarian Universalists is our purpose. And it seems to me there are a couple of ways we can do that that are more joyful and rich than our common habit of breaking things up into differences. We can find common ground with others, and we can celebrate together. If we focus on our differences, it is easy to widen the gap between us and other people. We are never going to agree with anyone on everything. Has anybody yet, if you are the person in this room, has found that you agree with another person on absolutely every single thing, you should have this job. because I don't know anybody who's got there. We are absolutely never going to be in total agreement with another person on anything because there's only one you, everybody else is already taken. We all have incredibly unique, different perspectives and different ways of experiencing the world. So if we focus on the differences, that can be helpful for clarity, but it's not super helpful for connecting. It's not super helpful for us being loving and supportive and building bridges in a society that is struggling with divisiveness. So we might want to focus on finding our similarities, noticing our common joys and struggles as human beings. Notice that most human beings, regardless of their conditioning or their cultural context, have the same aspirations and interests. People want to be loved. They want to be seen. They want to matter. They want to be treated with respect. They want to be heard. They want to contribute. Those core values move across all sorts of differences of identity and theology and politics and all sorts of things. So that list Elizabeth and Barry read at the beginning, at the top of it is being willing to learn and listen. That is the single most important thing any one of us will do to make the world a more just place. Open our minds and hearts to the stories, experiences, and identities and realities of people who are different than us. Listening with curiosity about another person's unique journey, hearing their story of trials and victories, seeking to unterstand, to stand with them, to understand their experiences of overcoming challenges, of the struggles they're facing. That is a profound and radical act of making the world a more just and loving place. And the other thing we can do is we can lift up stories of inspiration instead of despair, right? Hope. We can counter all the negativity in the world, which doesn't the negativity feed the phobias? All of the stories of all of the things that are going wrong do not help us feel less afraid. But they sure do help us feel more like defensive and self-righteous and out there trying to prove that we're going to be safe. So if we can lift up stories of hope and inspiration, it helps us be a little bit more expansive and a little bit more willing to bridge those differences, to make connections, and to resist those phobias and prejudices. So I was looking for some resources about this, and I found this awesome website. Okay? This website is called Life Beyond Numbers, and it focuses on bringing positive stories for inspiration and encouragement. Its purpose is to counter the perpetual media barrage we have of negativity. It's meant to be something that helps us think of a different story, a little bit more positive story, and to, in that sense, feel a little bit safer to connect with our fellow people. This is what Life Beyond Numbers says about their particular work. They say, inspiration, perseverance, motivation, hope, and belief. These are things that can't be quantified, and yet we know for a fact those are all that count. And that's why we call it a life beyond numbers. You can't quantify inspiration. You can't quantify hope. You can't actually quantify compassion. But wouldn't it be nice if we lived focused on those things? One of the sections on the site for Life Beyond Numbers is specifically dedicated to uplifting and positive stories about LGBTQIA people around the world. So I would encourage you to check it out. There's also a section there about women's stories and about change makers and all kinds of things. So I encourage you to check it out. It is a site that I believe it is based in India, but it is a global site, so there are stories from around the world. There are stories that are personal, small small stories. There are stories that are about professional victories, stories of groundbreaking acts of courage, and also just simple acts of kindness, simple words and deeds of famous people and also ordinary people, because they all count in the work of bringing more love and justice to our world. Our words and deeds matter. Encountering the fear and phobia in ourselves and in those around us. We all have conditioning. We all have conditioning to shut down and to shut others down. Think about that for a second. What ways do you stop yourself from doing things you want to do? How many of us repress our natural desire to express ourselves authentically? All of the time, because it's the socially appropriate thing to do. But yet there are truths we want to say, things we want to express. And how many of us want to shut other people down about their unique stories, their unique experiences? There are ways that we can learn to share without judging. So perhaps we can begin, all of us, to recognize the ways that our subtle fears and phobias are shaping our interactions. Maybe we can choose to listen to ourselves a little bit more. Compassion starts at home. Compassion starts at home with ourself. I would like to you do not have to raise your hand for this. I asked you earlier, for how many of you is should one of your favorite words? Now I'd like to ask you to ask yourselves, how often is that word used to describe yourself? You should have gotten that right. I should go to the gym more. I should have been a better listener. I should have done that differently. I should have made a different choice. I should. We should all over ourselves all the time. So compassion begins at home. We practice that with ourselves. And then when we do that, we're not a threat to ourselves. We don't have to be afraid. How many of you are afraid of the voice in your own head? I will raise my hand to that. I am afraid of the voice in my own head. She's mean. I'm so not usually a mean person. Most of you who know me would say I'm not particularly mean. But you should hear inside my head at 3 a.m. She's mean. Okay? That doesn't cultivate a feeling of being safe. Of being safe and open and willing to hear other people sometimes. So we begin with ourselves, and then we can begin next with the people who are closest to us. Can we take the risk of listening to them? And then we begin with our neighbors in this room, or in our families, in our neighborhoods. Then that allows us to go into those larger communities. That allows us to expand that self-love, that compassion out and out and out. We can listen more deeply and with more curiosity to the stories of others. We can make more life-affirming choices about what we do with our words and our hands and our money. We can focus on inspiring others and being inspired. And we can do that with people who are totally different than us, who make totally no sense to us, whose choices seem completely crazy to us. So your homework this week is to pick one person. If you're really brave, it'll be someone you know. If you just want to do like the slightly less graduate level task on this homework assignment, pick just someone in the media. Pick someone who makes you crazy because they make no sense. Their choices, their decisions, their perspective in the world makes no sense at all. And see if you can come up with 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 reasons that they're just like you. That they have the same needs and aspirations and goals you do. They're going about it a different way, maybe. but they're just like you. If we can do that, if we can make that space to simply change how we look at others who are different than us, then we will not need to have days anymore against homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia. We will not have to do that because we will not be functioning from a place of fear and judgment. If we can just simply say, well, that's different, but I'm guessing you've got a good reason for feeling that way. And maybe I can bring a little bit of curiosity and understanding to that. If y'all can work on that, y'all are going to save the world. You're going to save the planet. So these are things that we work on here in different ways. We have ways that we work on taking care of the earth, when that seems daunting, ways that we work on doing things in the world. So I want to give you a heads up about something that's going to be happening in our justice and generosity work. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be hearing some stories back about what you all did with the reverse offering. If you have not yet used your reverse offering money, for those of you who weren't here for that, here's what we do. Usually we're collecting money, right? About once a year, I give money away and tell people to go do something with it, to make a difference with it. So I've gotten a few of those reports back on what people did with that, but if you have not yet done that, or if you would like me to give you some cash to go do something, please let me know, because we're going to be talking about those in a couple of weeks. We are also currently accepting donations for Knox Pride, particularly for their food pantry, but for some other needs. So if you are interested in contributing to that, that would be great. We're also scheduling 2 field trips to go visit Knox Pride's new center. They have a new center in Knoxville. And so on Thursday, May 23rd, the time is yet to be determined based on the schedule of people who want to show up for that. And on Sunday, June 9th, after the service, we're going to be doing a couple of field trips. Alice, can I ask you a question? Are there sign-up sheets for those back on that table? I believe there might be. Yes, on the back table, or you can do those online, or you can email me about that. So if you're interested in one of those field trips to Knox Pride, we'll carpool, you can go check out their center. And we are always, as always, you can always contribute to the work that this organization does by using the QR code online, the QR code on the box, dropping a donation in the box at the back of the room. Everything that we do together is supported by your hands, your spirit, your financial resources, your material resources. So thank you to all of you for simply showing up and participating. And today we are going to have a report from our Green Sanctuary Committee, or our Green Sanctuary Moment. Who knows what it's going to be today? From Mary Francis, who's going to be telling us about our Green Sanctuary team. It's all right. There's a team, Mary Francis. Someone will handle it. It was your prop. It's all right. One moment. Technical difficulties while Mary Francis prepares for...
This is counterintuitive to being a mom to just leave a big mess. But
You know what? Somebody else will take care of it. Did you see that? I should clean it up because I'm a mom. Somebody else will do it.
Thank you. Now we got another mom cleaning it up. I feel horrible. Okay. So, hi, my name is Mary Frances Milligan, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm going to be giving today's Green Moment for the Green Sanctuary Committee. And I'm glad they're doing that because they're using reusable towels, and I'd probably reach for paper towels. So I wanted to tie in today's Green Moment with the theme of the service. Going, quote, green is a lot of fun when it's easy. When people give a list of, like, these are tips to do, we always look at the top ones or the ones we're already doing and be like, yeah. For example, after every service, I put my program in the recycle bin. I'm going green. Woo! Did you know that every light source in my house is an LED bulb? That took 10 minutes, and I'm going green. I feel really good about myself. Have you heard that eating a plant-based diet is one of the best ways you can help the earth? I've been a vegetarian for 29 years. I've got this in the bag. So, it's really easy when you don't have to do anything, or it's really simple. But what about things that make us uncomfortable? Those are a little harder. While I can easily brag about not having meat for 29 years, a lot of people, especially in this region, grew up eating meat as the centerpiece of every single meal. And honestly, going meatless is scary, even just for one meal a week. And so it's okay to admit that. It's frightening. Or what if you want to buy an electric car, but your family really values making road trips? That's part of who you identify as, and so things get a little complicated. And sometimes things you just don't want to do. Natural deodorant makes me smell. Compost is gross. It's okay. It's okay to admit those things. And so I wanted to do a little bit of work about one of my big stumbles. I already introduced it. One of my biggest thrills in life is going to the gas station every day and getting a 44-ounce cup of diet soda. Please do not come to me about diet soda. I like it. So that's not what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about what it's in. A big styrofoam cup, 44 ounces of goodness. And I have to say, when I think about first of all, I will say I sometimes feel a little guilty about bringing it in here because I know some of you are a judgmental bunch, but it makes me happy. And I have to think about why do I like it? Ultimately it's convenient and it's fast, and it's my little treat to myself. I feel like I quote make good money, but my family lives on a very strict budget, and for $1, this is $1 of joy for myself. And I like gas station culture I know I'm weird, but it's okay. Right before service, I went to the gas station on the corner, and there was a Bentley, a Ford F-150 lifted with mud splatters, and my minivan with 230,000 miles on it that looks like a forest sneezed on it right now. And we're all there buying our drinks. But, it's one of those things I'm like, okay, if I want to say I'm going green, I have to look at some of the things that make me uncomfortable because, there's only so many times we can check off the easy items. So I said, oh gosh, this is the thing that hurts the most to me, thinking about giving up my big styrofoam cup. So I started thinking about, let's think about some harm reduction here. What if I just go get it when I commute to work? That's 3 days a week. Okay. The gas station even sells a reusable mug. Now, it's only 32 ounces, and those extra 12 ounces do mean a lot to me. But, maybe I could make that transition. The other thing is I have a soda stream at home I use, and I can just buy a reusable carafe and take that wherever I go. So there are options, and don't judge me if you see me with one of those again, please. But, I'm going to be taking that own journey and kind of be like, why am I so attached? And why am I kind of scared to make what is a pretty simple change? And I think if we all kind of look down to it, we all have something about going green that's a little hard or a little icky. And Reverend Carol gave us homework, so I'm not going to give you more homework, but I do invite you to think about the things that make us go, about going green, and look at maybe why and what you could do about it. And if you want to talk about it, feel free to talk to me or any member of the Green Sanctuary Committee. Thank you. And thank you for cleaning up my mess.
Okay, that was awesome. Thank you for that. None of us can do all the things all the time. Some of us are going to focus on environmental issues, others of us are going to focus on LGBTQIA issues, others, we can't all do all of the things. It's just simply not possible. So this week, your homework, be compassionate with yourself. Go ahead and do a little bit of Mary Francis's homework too there. What one thing do you kind of feel like, I should be able to let go of that. Why am I afraid to let go of that? And one person in your life or in the media who really bugs you, that you can find 4 or 5 or 10 things in common with. I always say this, and nobody almost never does it. Would you please report back on those things? My email's easy to find. I would love to have emails that say, ooh, I thought about so-and-so, and it was really hard. In a moment, we're going to close our service. And I'm going to invite you to do something uncomfortable while Barry reads our closing words. For some of us,
Another one.
Another one. Stand up. If you feel able. This is a request, not a command, because we don't do that here. It's a request, an offer. Now, if you feel so inclined, I want you to not hold hands with anybody else. But if you would like to hold hands with somebody, please do so. The brave thing is don't do it if you don't want to. And Barry's going to share our closing words with us today. Put my glasses on. There we go. There we go. We're ready.
Okay. Contemporary poet John Mark Green has this to say about fear and love. If you want to tap into what life has to offer, let love be your primary mode of being, not fear. Fear closes you down and makes us retreat. It locks doors and limits opportunities. Love is about being open to possibilities, seeing the world with new eyes. It widens our heart and mind. Fear incarcerates. Love liberates.
Go in peace, go in courage, and go in love. Have a wonderful week, everybody. And stick around for potluck.